All right.
Woo! I think we're going to be live.
You don't want to see that. You don't want to see that.
I love it. Tell us about your new car then, Bradley. Because you know I am a Peugeot
It's a Peugeot
fan.
308.
Yeah, but I'm a Peugeot fan.
It's got some power in it. It's all right. If you want to see
so
something about it, go look at his video on the Nürburgring. It's all right. It's average. It's a Prince car.
It's so
no one cares.
I'm a Peugeot fanboy.
Hardcore tonight.
So let me tell you. Let me just tell you a very, very quick anecdote. I was in a WhatsApp chat with my boss and a couple of the engineers that I work with, and one of our test cars, in fact, they call it our ultra high performance test car for testing tires, is a Volkswagen Golf GTI Club Sport, which is super fast hot hatch, and they were about my car by saying how much better the Golf was, and they asked me, not knowing themselves what the answer was, they asked me, so how does it stack up against our test Golf then? And I googled all the stats, and it turns out my car is 100 kilos lighter, has 10 more horsepower, has wider tires, bigger wheels, much bigger brakes, and a proper limited slip diff, none of which the Golf has. So the answer was, my car is faster in every way and has massage seats. So
and has massage seats. Is that just an extra and the horse you rode in on?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's rapid, and it is getting me in lots of trouble with my fiance, but it's amazing. So
are you going to be
getting in trouble? You've made a decent, for once in your life, you've made
tell
a
her,
decent financial decision with
yes, but I didn't make the decision jointly with her. And
yeah, of course, that's what you're supposed to do. Bell end. You should know this. You've been together long enough.
I texted her and gave her the whole. Whilst I was at work, I gave her all of the reasons why I thought this was good, and I said, "What do you think?" And she texted me back saying, "I'm too busy to talk about this right now. Let's talk." And then, no, wait. And at that point, I was thinking, "Oh, that's a shame. I won't be able to go get this car today. I have to talk to her." And then, 20 minutes later, whilst I was at work, she texted me and said, "It all sounds good." And that, to me, is the clearest permission if ever it existed. And she denied categorically that counted as permission. She said, "No, we needed to have a big talk about it."
As normal, your girlfriend does things that aren't normal.
I would say. Is that your girlfriend, Luke?
No, he's just calling me. My watch is buzzing.
No, right. Okay.
So I've moved that track discussion to just before qualifying.
No, just so. Yeah, okay, yeah, why not? Yeah, we'll just have a Neil Palmer tell us why he loves this track so much.
Peter, Peter. So you were saying that the Isle of Man TT behind you is 33 miles. I just don't see 37. Okay, 37. Maybe that works. It's just the Nordschleife is like 27 kilometers. Yeah, the Nordschleife is 27 kilometers, which should be like roughly half of 37 miles, but it doesn't look anything like that on that picture. So I don't quite get how that's possible. I don't quite get how that's to scale, because the Nordschleife is 27 miles long. So how is that even close to being to scale? Have they just done?
Well done.
Maybe
this is welcome to Brad ruining stuff that's in people's houses.
No, but maybe it's just the shapes. Maybe they're not actually to scale.
This is why I have a green screen.
It's 60 kilometers long. 60. That's a long way. That is a long way.
If it's
between 21 kilometers?
Hang on. No, 27, and it looks like it's a fraction of the size of that big one. Maybe it's because there's lots of corners that you can't really see on there.
It's only just the same length as they do.
Is that coming through okay?
What?
Is that coming through okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So just make sure you're on mute on the intro. Me and Brad haven't really discussed what we're going to talk about, but let's just talk about if you're happy or sad or excited, or whether you thought it was dull, whether you'd watch again. 7 out of 10 would go mental in front of my family again. The whole family came round and went, "What the hell's going on? What the hell's going on?" I was like, "You've got to see this." I'm whooping, cheering, crying. And then, after all of that, I realised that Perez has popped up into third place as well. And that was it. I just lost it. I went absolutely ballistic. Don't know whether
Before
you guys...
go anywhere, has there been any later developments on whether Perez has got a penalty or not?
Yes.
No penalty for any of the DRS infringements.
Good.
The Williams
as much of it as you want.
The Stroll stay.
Oh yeah, I should get the results up on the screen. So
what's great about this is that Force India beat Renault once, and Spanish is going to rub it in for the rest of the season.
No.
I'm ready for that.
Neil, I think you'll find when we get to that section, I'm going to be pretty chill about it. I don't think that We need to talk about who's destroying. We'll just see. We'll just see when we get there. Okay.
Hey, who wants a great fact? Do you want a great fact about the clerk? He's the first Monegasque to score points in 57 years.
Monegasque just means French, though, doesn't it? So that doesn't really count. Yeah. That's like saying someone's the first person from Yorkshire to do something. It's like, well, it's the first British.
No, do you know what it's like? It's like saying it's the first person from Jersey. And everyone from Jersey goes, oh no, we're an independent sovereign nation. Okay, then the Russians come invading. Which army are you going to send to defend you? Exactly, British. Shut up. There we go. So let's start the show. Let's start.
Landon got 2 points. Okay.
All right, everyone mute except Brad. And Brad, you just hold that perfectly still. Don't ruin my intro. No duck sounds. Come on. Because of you, I'm calling my kittens White Kitten and Black Kitten. I'm not giving them real names. The kids don't agree. All right, let's get going on this. Cough, cough. 1, 2, 1, 2. You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. This episode is called How'd You Like Them Stamps? I'm your host, Richard Spanners Ready, and I'm joined by Bradley Philpott. How's it going, Brad?
It's going really, really well.
Were you excited today with the end of that race? I was fine. I was calm.
I was excited with most of that race. I was shouting and getting told off for shouting.
My family all ran downstairs thinking something terrible had happened. The children ran down, sensing that something exciting was happening. My wife was just shouting, good thing or bad thing? Good thing or bad thing? And I'm like, I don't know.
I was being told off for frightening the cats.
Fantastic. Well, Brad, of course, you're here for Matt Trumpet, so you know how to replace him. Talk slowly, make all your points over the course of 5 minutes rather than 30 seconds, and you're good.
And refer to Bottas as Botas, and we're there.
We are an independent podcast hosted on missedapexpodcast.com. We aim to bring you a race review before your Monday morning commute. We might be wrong, but we're first. This show is safe for work. We're keeping it clean here so you can play this with kids in the background or at work. Although I will stress, this isn't made for children. You just won't get in trouble for playing it. I'm also joined by Missed Apex regular Anil Palmer. How's it going, Anil?
Very well, Spanners. I have no idea what we're going to discuss today because that was a pretty dull race, wasn't it? Modern Formula One, it's not very good.
We need to fix it. We need to change all the rules. Now then, Anil, I'm sure you're looking forward to talking about Renault and Force India with me later.
Let's just move on.
Let's talk to our race strategist, karty expert type man, Alex Jeansy Van Gene. How's it going, Alex?
Going all good. Glad to be back on again.
And we have a patron on board to help us with the chat room. A man that is undoubtedly slightly faster than me in a go-kart. I will get you next time. Peter, how's it going, Peter?
I'm fine. Thank you, Spanners. Nice to see you all.
Let's move on then and see what happened this weekend. Anil, this circuit has jumped up on the calendar over the last 3 years. And this year, though, nobody was surprised. Everyone saw this coming. Everyone was like, it's Baku. They were rubbing their hands together. Everyone was talking about safety cars as if it's a certainty. What do you make of this circuit?
I think it's by far the best modern F1 track. You have these long straights, some really tight corners. And unlike other street circuits like Monaco, which I know you're not a fan of, the cars have outgrown circuits like Monaco, but they can race here. And the only negativity about it is the fact that it's in Azerbaijan. If this track was anywhere else in the world, everyone would say it was the best track on the calendar.
All right, so a little bit more about it. It's a street circuit, so why doesn't it frankly suck like other street circuits do?
Right, well, if you look at Monaco or Singapore, they're very tight. The cars never really travel at high speed for a long periods of time, whereas here, because that final sector is like a 40-second full throttle section, you get proper slipstreaming, you actually get racing, and the cars seem to be able to race. You don't get drivers coming on the radio saying, I can't overtake, I'm stuck here. They really go for it. And of course, there's not much runoff. So you get if there is a mistake, at least a safety car, a virtual safety car. And as we'll discuss later, that's very good news for some of the midfield teams.
Yeah, and it's got lots of really long straights followed by really sharp 90-degree corners, which give you the perfect opportunity to have a lunge, like we've seen plenty of times today, and get up the inside. And then has another corner going the other direction as well. So it gives the opportunities for cutbacks, which is always what you're looking for if you can't get somebody actually onto the apex of the corner.
Yeah, so when we got onto qualifying, though, Bradley, we did see people making mistakes. And after saying that he was going to be all nice and sensible after China, Max Verstappen showed, maybe he was giving it a little bit too much. How did you see that qualifying incident? Because I think everybody collectively was holding their breath, and he delivered in the bad way.
Yeah, I think I was really hoping this weekend, actually, that Max would just take stock and in all sessions just be the sensible, mature driver that I know his age wouldn't suggest, but his experience in racing in general would lend you to believe that he was capable of. And I was just a little bit annoyed because I'm always telling everyone how great the guy is. I'm a little bit annoyed that he didn't have that perfect weekend.
Go on, Alex.
Again, I think with Max, he's got the undoubted talent. He's an unbelievable racing driver, and we all know that he's got his talent is huge, but it's the consistency. And I think that's what, at the moment, I still don't think he's ready to win a world championship. Can he race for a season rather than racing for a single race, which I think is all we see from him at the moment, is do or die for that one race that he's doing. It's great for telly, it's great for us as fans of racing, but for him, for a season, I don't think it's the thing that he should be doing.
Anil?
Yeah, so talking about qualifying, I lost count. In fact, even in practice, I lost count of the amount of yellow flags we had, because the runoff here is kind of straight off. It's straight on at the corners. So if you make a mistake, you end up going into the runoff and then reversing back out. And that made qualifying really interesting, because all it takes is a double yellow flag, and all of a sudden the driver's not going to get their fastest lap in. So I really enjoyed watching drivers kind of do 2 or 3 fast laps again and again. And then it was just it's quite exciting to watch, because there just seems to be a new driver going off all the time. And then, of course, we had the Gasly-Hartley incident.
Oh, yeah. No, go on.
Which was pretty extraordinary.
Expand on that for anyone who didn't catch qualifying.
And then let me interject as well.
Brad's desperate to get in on this.
I don't know what actually happened to Brendan Hartley, but in the final, I think at the very end of Sector 2, the downhill run, he was going very slowly. He either had a puncture or some suspension damage. He kind of brought the car over to the left-hand side. Behind him, he had Pierre Gasly, who was on a quick lap. Gasly catches him, doesn't really realise what's going on, because the yellow flags went out. I don't think the marshals had realised that Hartley's car was damaged, as opposed to it was a slow lap. And so I think Hartley kind of looked in his mirror, saw a fast car coming, moved to one side he shouldn't have moved to, and Gasly just misses him by, a matter of inches. That would have been a huge, huge accident.
So let me lend an alternative view to exactly what happened. So Hartley obviously damaged his car somewhere. That was completely his mistake. And as he rounded that corner where the very near contact happened, he was turning left, trying to stay pretty much to the left. And he was certainly not on the racing line. There was a full car's width and more of space for Gasly to just continue his qualifying lap as if there was no one in front of him. Gasly rounded the corner, seemed to see Hartley extremely late. It was really odd that racing drivers are normally looking very far in the distance, and he just didn't seem to realise what was going on. He just obviously wasn't expecting to see a car there, and inexplicably appeared to try to go down his inside, which was essentially giving up on the qualifying lap. He was never going to get a quick time by diving down the inside. Hartley will not have expected anybody to go for the inside. So as far as Hartley's concerned, he's staying off the racing line, expecting a car to go to his right. As he senses a car approaching him, he looks in the mirrors, sees that Gasly's going for the inside, and instinctively tweaks the steering wheel to the right. But by that time, Gasly has then decided to go to the right really late, and that then made it look like a very close thing that really made it look like Hartley's fault. But I think actually it was nowhere near as much his fault as people were making out. He had a damaged car. It's hard to stay left. If he actually was trying to stay all the way to the left with a punctured right front, he'd have had to go so slow that could have been even more dangerous, because he would have been on the apex of the previous corner. I just think he was a bit hard on himself, and everyone else was a bit too hard on him too.
I think they were probably frightened and they realised how potentially serious that could have been. Let's just have a quick word with the chat room. Look, I've let my little piece of paper slip onto the live stream by accident. Peter Goodchild, what are the chat room saying to you?
We've got something from Andy Whitney here. He says Grosjean has crashed on the formation lap in Brazil under the safety car today. Has he also crashed in the pit lane for the trifecta?
It's an award you don't want.
I know someone who did crash in the pit lane, but we'll get onto that later.
And also Evangelos Heterakleitos, he says that Van Gien looks 16 without the facial hair.
He's a very handsome man.
I'm starting a new job tomorrow, so I've got to have a slightly clean, fresh-shaven look to it.
I wish I could say that.
Bradley, you have actually karted with Brendan Hartley. How do you rate him? How do you feel he's doing in F1? I think Jeansy wants to get in after that.
Okay, so I karted with him. It was actually a round of my championship, British Rental Kart Championship, that I won a few years ago. I think he came top 5 or something like that. Anyway, that wasn't really reflective of how good he is. I feel a bit sorry for him because he hasn't been in single seaters for quite a long time. He's been driving very fast cars, but very different cars in a very different kind of championship. So I'm still willing to give him a bit more, a bit more leeway and time to demonstrate what he's capable of, because people who have worked with him at Porsche and other teams have said how good he is. So I think that he can maybe show us a bit more in the future.
All right, then. Well, Matt's not here, and Matt is normally the one who tells us how the race is won and lost. So did I trust either of you guys to take this on? Did I say, Bradley, tell us how the race is won or lost? And Neil, give us your view on how Baku panned out? No, I didn't. I got Matt Trumpets to give us a recording. And here he is. Matt Trumpets, how the race was won and lost in 60 seconds.
Hi everybody, I'm Matt Trumpets and welcome to the Race in 60 Seconds. As you may know, last week Anil and I reviewed the 99 European Grand Prix, which may have been even more eventful than today's race. In it, I tested a new development, the Race in 60 Seconds. Given that at least one of our 3 listeners liked it, we're going to deploy it today on a proper Grand Prix weekend. So here we go. Start the clock, Steve. Leclerc, off. Ericsson, off. Parade lap. Lights out. Crash, 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 crash. Safety car. Ocon out. Sirotkin out. Raikkonen pits. Perez pits. Magnussen pits. Alonso pits. Restart. Verstappen gets Ricciardo. P4. Crash. Hulkenberg out. Stewards is like, all your incidents are belong to me. Ericsson off. Hamilton pits. Perez investigated. Vettel pits. Bottas lead. Bottas doesn't pit. Ricciardo gets Verstappen. Ricciardo pits. Verstappen pits out in front of Ricciardo. Crash. Verstappen and Ricciardo no out. Safety car. New tires for all. Crash. Grosjean out. More safety car. Restart. Gasly. Magnussen. Crash. Vettel off. Bottas leads. Bottas puncture. Hamilton leads. Perez gets Vettel P3 and checkers. Plus about 3 hours of post-race investigations. And there you have it, the race in 60 seconds.
Well done, Matt.
Well, unfortunately, the way I queued that up was it was in my Google Play. So what you've just heard is the next song that was automatically lined up by my Google Play. And yes, it was Red Balloon from the film Home. I'm not embarrassed about it. Neither should you be. Real men watch kiddie movies with their children. So I would rate Matt's race review 7 out of 10. Would listen to again. Thank you very much for that, Matt Trumpets. But yeah, I mean, Brad, you have to actually realise after all that excitement, it wasn't the only safety car of the race. There was one immediately.
Yes, it was. Are we going to do a whose fault is it? Because it seems to be it's quite a simple one, really.
No, I'll tell you what, we'll do the whose faults is it later, but I was just going through what happened at this point. Anil, you're desperately getting my attention. Is it to tell me that I am correct in my musical tastes?
Definitely not Spanners. One thing I thought was really interesting about this track is, even though there's that massive straight, the run to turn 1 is tiny. So actually the top 5 got away very cleanly. And it just happened to be that mid pack where everyone has kind of got bunched together. And there were a few incidents. So there was, first of all, Alonso, Sirotkin and a Renault. Oh God! So Alonso ends up losing 2
interestingly,
wheels.
It was Sorokin that was penalised for that particular contact, wasn't it? And did anyone else on board there think that it was actually the Renault squeezing Sorokin that then led to the contact with Alonso?
It's certainly
Sorokin was completely sandwiched, totally and utterly sandwiched.
But he was penalised for it, so it was. Maybe they saw something we didn't.
Well, that's interesting. So we might be suggesting very early on in the show that the steward's decisions might not be absolutely correct and reflective of what we think should be the case, which is very, very interesting. But then it kind of settled down, that race, after all the whose fault is this is-nesses that we will cover soon. Hamilton was kind of sitting 3 seconds off of Vettel, and then Bottas sitting another 3 seconds back. But it kind of looked like, okay, they're all settling in. This is that point of the race where no one wants to risk anything. They're seeing how the tyres play out. And then we're trying to decide, well, is this Vettel managing the pace, or is this Hamilton sitting back out of the aero wash and kind of, saving his tyres for later in the race? Now, in China, I felt that it was Bottas managing that pace behind Sebastian Vettel. I know a lot of people argued with me. Here, do we think perhaps it was more the Ferrari that was in control?
Yeah, I was never convinced that Hamilton had the extra speed that he needed to close in on Vettel. And then occasionally you'd see the gap would ebb and flow. You'd get a few tenths quicker, a few tenths closer, sometimes even half a second or more. And I think, he's pushing now. Maybe he's trying to, get Vettel to speed up. I just wasn't really sure. I don't know. What do you think is the actual answer? I don't think that he really had an answer for Vettel's pace today.
Well, Anil, I think the fact that Lewis Hamilton started having a lot of tyre problems, started sounding very energetic and perhaps a bit lost on the radio, kind of points to the fact that Vettel was able to pull out gaps at will, and Lewis Hamilton kind of getting suckered in to trying to close that gap.
Right, and of course, let's remember, Hamilton pitted first because he had to, because he'd got through the tyres, because he was chasing too hard, he flat spotted them. Vettel, and also Bottas, were able to go a very, very long way into the race on that first set of tyres. And of course, that ends up deciding the race effectively. But one thing I do want to say about that first stint was the battle between the Red Bull and the Renaults. Renault's running the ultra soft tyre, so make sure I get this correct. And they just seem to be trading places every lap. And I loved it. One car would go past with DRS, and then the Red Bulls appeared to really struggle to heat the tyres up. Then they would try to fight back into the braking zones. I really enjoyed that scrap.
So why do you think the Renaults were that much quicker than the Red Bulls in that phase of the race? Did they just have less drag? The Red Bulls obviously notorious for, well, not notorious. It impresses by having such a lot of downforce, and it's so good through the fast corners. And obviously it's very stop-start here with very high speeds. Do you think the Renault was just that bit more slippery at the end of the straights?
Well, I think so. Both Renaults were running the ultra soft. The Red Bulls were running the super softs, and I think they just had more grip. But we saw after about 10 laps, and bear in mind we spent the first few laps under the safety car, those ultra soft did not last a very long time. The Renault started to fall back very quickly.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But also, both Red Bull drivers complaining about something to do with the battery. They couldn't charge. They were running out of power at the end of the straights, and it was interesting that it affected both of those drivers. I don't know if conspiracy theory time, Renault in a fight with them. Maybe they just turned a setting from the pit wall. Of course, I'm just joking, I think. But I thought it was interesting that Red Bull's long run pace, especially at the beginning of the race on those tyres, was nowhere. They were losing that a second and a half a lap to Vettel.
Okay, so apart from the fact that they were on the softer tyre, you think that the car itself hasn't had updates which have kind of brought it that much closer to the Red Bull? I know it's so hard to tell when you've got the delta between the different types of tyre, but I was thinking at that phase in the race where they both passed the Red Bulls, I was thinking, wow, Renault have really brought some great updates that have helped their race pace. So you think it is?
Yeah,
it
but
is
apparently Renault did bring quite a big upgrade to the floor this weekend. And from my understanding, a lot of the downforce of an F1 car comes from the floor. But I think it was a bit of a one-off. I'd be very surprised if in Barcelona, which is a very high-speed track with long corners, that Renault will catch Red Bull over a stint.
Yeah, I agree. I think the tyres had definitely a big factor in this. I know Matt will absolutely kill me if I don't cover the difficulties in getting these tyres to work. But Jeansy, you get in there first.
What I was going to say with regards to Renault is, I think, again, this track is a very different type of circuit. It's not, your standard circuit. So I think Anil's right when he says when we go to Spain in a couple of weeks, then we'll get a real idea of actually how close Renault are. I think it's track specific, and the fact that they got those tyres heated up and going at the beginning part of the race, but then you saw how much they dropped off the cliff. But I still think they went much further than everyone thought they were going to, didn't they?
I think the reason that didn't stick out in my mind is, they were quicker because of those tyres, is because Hulkenberg never really made it that far, did he? Hulkenberg had this unforced error that had probably lots of us groaning, because as another kind of podium opportunity, potentially, probably not in reality as it happened, but another opportunity out the window. We didn't really see or hear a lot more about that afterwards, but it was quite a big error from him. Lost a lot of points.
So let's carry on a bit with where the race was won and lost. Now, the chat room I saw there made a bit of a comment, Peter, that that Hamilton didn't have to pit due to tyre wear, that it was because he'd locked up and felt that he'd damaged those tyres.
But he locked up and damaged those tyres because he was wearing them out.
Okay, you sounded a lot like Jeansy there, Peter.
Yeah, I was just actually noticing that Patrick Green said, I wonder if they considered just plugging the Red Bulls into a wall outlet with really long cords. I thought it was hilarious.
Okay, good. I hope we hear more from the chat room later. If you want to join the chat room, just search Missed Apex Podcast on YouTube and click the little bell. You'll get an alert every time we go live. We run the live stream as a live event so that you can come and chat and talk to us in real time. And then we put a video out afterwards so that you can watch the whole thing again, except without the stupid and litigious things I say and do included as part of that broadcast. So let's continue with where the race was kind of won and lost. We had two battles then. We had the battle up front, and then we had this intriguing battle between the two Red Bull drivers. But what was interesting was we were seeking the undercut, and perhaps Brad, you and I were wondering whether Valtteri Bottas would be used in a Kimi Raikkonen kind of role to kind of go in early, as if he's going for the undercut, going in super early. Yes, he was 6 seconds off, but that would get Vettel thinking, oh my goodness, I might have to cover off Bottas here. But in the end, the undercut wasn't working today.
Yeah, so at this point of the race, I was probably talking on our WhatsApp group saying, Bottas is going to pit now, force Vettel to maybe think about his options. And as it happened, because Lewis locked up and he had to pit, it was almost those roles were reversed. And I think that worked very much for the better for Bottas, because he was able to, as you said at the start, he would have probably been able to run those tyres until the end of the race if he'd been allowed to. He was just so much better on his tyres than Lewis was. And as Jeansy said, he had to pit because he damaged the tyres. But he damaged the tyres because he didn't have enough retardation left in them to actually apply the brakes hard. So he locked up very easily and locked both fronts very easily.
Right, so when Hamilton went off, he lost about 5 seconds to Seb in that lap. So I think it was pretty clear he was going to come in. It was interesting that no one seemed to know what the best race tyre was, because even when Hamilton put the softs on, his pace wasn't particularly good. Raikkonen effectively started the race on the soft because he came in the pits at the end of the first lap. His pace on the softs wasn't good. Because it was so cold, those soft tyres weren't making the undercut work. So I think it was pretty clear early on that Vettel and Bottas were just going to run long and just keep going. So going back to Spanis's point, where was the race won and lost? Vettel and Bottas stay out for quite a while. But I did notice on the onboards, Vettel's front right had a lot of, I think graining's the term, where you kind of have that ring around it. And then Bottas, on the lap Vettel eventually came in, Bottas took about 6.5 tenths of a second from him. And this isn't the first time where I've noticed that at the end of the stints, the Mercedes, or at least Bottas, suddenly gets a lot of pace. So even if maybe they're not working the tyres well, it seems to come to them. So I guess the reason why Ferrari eventually said to Seb, right, we need to box, is because they could see the performance was going. I don't think they were worried about Lewis at that point. I think they knew they had Lewis covered. And at that point, Bottas is just playing the exact same strategy we saw Vettel do in Australia, which is, and actually Kimi did in the last race, just stay out. Just don't box. And all it takes is one car to go into the wall, and you've got it. And that then, of course, led to the Red Bull battle, where Ricciardo, who's been fighting Verstappen the whole race, is desperate to get ahead of him to pit first. It backfires, and then he has to overtake Verstappen again, which is what leads to the incident.
Okay, you've covered a lot of ground there. Let's just roll back slightly. Let's just be clear, though. Bottas has earned the right there to wait for the safety car. I don't think it's quite the same, where Vettel was actually, he was third and he was well off the pace. And Kimi Raikkonen had the first option for the strategy. He came in. But Bottas here, he had enough pace in hand because he was saving his tyres. That seems like the likely cause. Lewis Hamilton didn't seem to have any tyres left, Brad. But Valtteri Bottas, he had the kind of maybe the tactical sense to go, hang on a minute, this is a long race. I don't need to get sucked into a lap-for-lap battle. And also, this is Baku. There's just bound to be a safety car.
Yeah, Bottas has been seriously impressive in his tyre management, lack of complaints, and just getting on with the job and taking the fight, not just to his teammate, but essentially being the lead Mercedes driver over several of the last few races. He's been the threat. And he did exactly the same again today. I know he ran behind Hamilton initially because of qualifying, but he was so much better on his tyres than Hamilton. He, as you said, he earned himself the opportunity to be in the right place at the right time when the opportunity arose.
Something just occurred to me with regards to Lewis and tyres. Didn't he have a lockup on his first quali run and then do 2 extra laps? So didn't he actually do more laps in quali and have a flat stop? Didn't have any spare tyres to change onto because he only had 1 set of super softs. Am I right? I think I am.
For the purposes of this podcast, you are correct.
No one checks.
Because the rest of us don't know.
No one goes back and says, were they right or wrong? I never receive emails going through the fine minutiae of the exact words, phrasings and terminologies we used. It's a show. It's a puppet. Peter, what's going on in the chat room?
Quite a lot, of course, as there should be. Something we haven't talked about yet, which is Alonso on 2 wheels. That's Sandra Reynolds said, how on earth did Alonso get that 2-wheel wagon back?
It's a really good point because we're used to seeing a flat tyre and one goes down, and say if it's the rear tyre, you're just worrying about breaking the floor with that rubber whipping around as they go forward, and they're trying to slow it down to reduce that damage. But with 2 wheels down, actually, it was like a motorbike just pulling you, trying to pull, all that metal on one side. And he was really struggling to keep it out of the pit wall. What else are that cheeky chat room up to? It's going past fast today, isn't it, Peter?
It is. Yes, Sam Watley said someone's going to call them halographs at some point about the new graphics.
We should do that. Sam,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We're going to pass that off as our own terminology. Anything else, Peter?
Plenty. Your song, Chris, the chat room saying, can we give Spanners a grid penalty for violating our ears with that?
Okay, I may edit that out of the final cut, but yes, my playlist accidentally played out on the live stream. I stand by it. Unfortunately, it might get us a YouTube takedown, so I might have to get rid of that. Okay, then, so, Brad, the other battle that we looked at was the 2 Red Bull guys. And yes, they did kind of have an effect on the top 3, but they were very much battling in isolation once the Renaults disappeared. Now, what do you make of these 2 Red Bull guys? Because last week, or last race, we had Max Verstappen as probably the faster of the 2, leading the charge to try and steal that win once they went onto the softer tyres. This week, though, it really looked like Daniel Ricciardo was the much faster car driver package.
I don't know whether I'd say he was much faster, but it looked to me like they were certainly much more evenly matched than they had been before. And we had this storyline of several little battles play out. And I don't know quite how much of the timings of those overtaking attempts and actual overtakes that occurred between the 2 were down to Ricciardo saving his energy. Because as we mentioned before, they both had battery issues where they didn't seem to have enough energy left at certain points in the lap. It seemed like he was being sensible, saving up enough, and then going for a big attack on Max. And there were these several moments where he was fended off in what looked like very well-judged defense maneuvers by Max, on the line, but very well done. And others where it wasn't quite so well-judged, like where they came together at turn 1, and I was saying how he was being naughty. But I thought it's inevitable, and the commentator said this in the race if you were watching Sky. If you've got 2 drivers that are performing almost identically in the same machinery, in the same race, they're going to be fighting for the same bit of track quite often. They're both doing a good job, and that they just were. They're in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, but normally when you've got the equally talented drivers in the same machinery in Formula One of late, that means that you will see them following each other with a gap of about 2 seconds to get out of that turbo wash, that's the wrong word. Let's call it turbo vortices wash. That'll do. But this time... Dirty air, thanks. You know all the technical terms. This time, though, we had that big drag up that long straight, and the slipstream had a real effect, which meant that we could get cars attacking into turn one. And I don't think, Jeansy, I think that was more than a bit naughty when they made that first contact on turn one. I think that is Max Verstappen being very uncompromising. If he'd have done that on another car, you'd have gone, oh, okay, that's rough. But that's his teammate. That guy's on the same team.
Well, I saw the analysis afterwards and what they did on Sky, and you actually see him unwind the steering. He could have held a constant angle to keep himself away from Danny Rick, but he didn't. He released the steering. He squeezed Danny without a shadow of a doubt. Definitely did that. But also, to be fair, Red Bull's biggest mistake was they should have been following each other 2-3 seconds apart and keeping them there, because they let Kimi catch them. If the race had come out normally, they might have been able to stay ahead of Kimi, who had obviously done well after his early pit stop.
All right, so you're kind of saying there should be team orders. Anil, do you agree with team orders for Red Bull?
I do wonder if Daniel had gotten ahead of Max earlier, well before the pit stops, would he have been able to break away? Because it seemed as though they were kind of pulling each other along a bit. I get the feeling ultimately that Daniel believed the undercut to be the best strategy, and he was waiting for the pit stop. And that's when he was like, right, 1 or 2 laps before the stops, I'm going to make a lunge and go for it. I think Ricciardo was probably overall the faster driver today. There were at least 3 occasions in the race where I thought they were about to touch into turn one. And I completely agree with Bradley. I think the first touch between them, the wheel-to-wheel contact, was very, very cheeky on Max's part. But I guess we should probably talk about the pit stops and how that affected the race. Should I just go into it, Spanners?
Let's hear from Jeansy first.
It's actually a shame that what happened at the end of the race happened, because up to that point, it was some of the best on-track racing that we've seen between two people, lap after lap, for such a long period of time that we've seen in a really, really long time. So they kind of both blotted their copybooks later in the day. But up until that point, the standard of the moves and stuff, the defending was superb.
Yeah, let's hear from your point there, Anil. You're absolutely right. The pit stops surprised everybody. So it's this same point we've touched on once again, that normally we're all going for the undercut. And you're thinking, if you come in, get fresh boots on, even though you've got a harder compound of tyre, they're fresher, you've got more grip, you're going to make up that gap. So basically, you're going to close the pit window. By the time the other guy comes in and does his pit stop, you've already gotten ahead on the road. So you undercut to get track position. However, on this occasion, people were coming out of the pits, and we saw Lewis Hamilton coming out on a fresh set of soft tyres, barely getting away from Max Verstappen. In fact, Max Verstappen saying he's being held up by Lewis Hamilton, not enough to close up and overtake. But what we saw then is that the normal tactic of giving the lead driver the choice of strategy wasn't the advantage that it normally is today. So Daniel Ricciardo bursting his gut to get ahead of him, to get that team strategy, kind of backfired.
Right, and we do see this occasionally at some circuits. Monaco is a very good example because it's a very short lap and the tyres don't immediately come up to temperature. I think there were perhaps warning signs for Red Bull that might be the case. You just mentioned Lewis. Now, Lewis was on the soft tyre. I think they probably believe that the ultra soft, being a much softer tyre, it's got a lower operating window, wouldn't give Ricciardo the same problem. But it was fairly obvious that Verstappen's in-lap was much faster than Ricciardo's out-lap. And then again, we ended up with another battle between the two of them.
I was extremely surprised to see how far ahead Verstappen was after that little scenario played out. Is there something to be said that we were maybe one step too hard in the tyres this weekend? It seemed to me like everyone was struggling the whole time, and the tyres were just generally too hard.
Hey, with all this interesting strategy talk, I'd almost forgotten that we've got to assign blame at some point. So let's just quickly go through the fact that the safety car came out and Sebastian Vettel all or nothinged it into the lead. He was briefly in the lead, though, wasn't he, Anil? He didn't need to do that. He could be leading the championship today.
Oh, I love Ferrari, but I've said it before, Spanners. I don't rate Seb. And
fair.
I just can't believe it. I think he threw it away. And I know people will say, oh, but the tyres were colder after the safety car. But It's the same for everyone.
Brad?
I definitely didn't jump off my sofa going, yes! Yeah, I don't hate Seb or anything, but I really wanted someone else to win today. So I wasn't being particularly neutral. I didn't care who it was. I just wanted someone else to win. And at that point, I was gutted that it looked like Bottas was about to be overtaken, and then he suddenly wasn't. And as a bonus, Vettel lost a couple more places. So that was probably the peak excitement for me of the whole race.
I've always said that I think there is nobody better out there at the moment at leading a race, taking it from the front and leading it. And there's no one who feels more commanding than Seb. But the second he's got a bit of trouble, it doesn't seem to work. I mean, that lunge was ridiculous. I mean, it was never going to work from the start because it was too close. They were weaving all over the place. He didn't need to do it because Lewis had backed out and so had Kimi. And he just completely threw away his title lead.
And he was lucky not to have lost more points, wasn't he? He was lucky not to have completely gone down the escape route and had to turn around with a full U-turn or hit the barrier like some Formula 2 drivers.
Yeah, before we go to the chat room, I just wanted to say, Jeansy, you jinxed it, man. I was seeing the WhatsApp group during the race. You're like, Seb's got this. Nothing's going to go wrong. He's going to stroll off. And I was like, right, he's jinxed it.
Peter, what's going on in the chat room? They're discussing something called paid chat. I didn't know we could charge for chat room comments. $10 a comment.
I think there's an idea that people pay $10 a comment and the winner gets $100, but now the citizens are fighting back and saying that they refuse to have paid chat. So I think that's that over.
Boo, I want to quit my job.
They're also saying it feels like we're all just killing time waiting for spanners to let us assign blame.
All right, then. Look, let's not waste any more time. There was a couple of incidents in this race. And as you know, in my marriage, it's never enough to just say, OK, we moved on. It happened. It's a marriage incident. No, we must assign blame before moving on.
Whose fault is it?
Whose fault is this? Wow, it's a good one today. Now, there's been a very, very binary argument on Twitter about the incident between Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo. Now, what we saw was what led to the safety car. I'm so excited, I can barely contain myself. This is the sort of thing that you see on show reels for the next 10, 15 years. You're going to be seeing this incident and the radio calls and the interviews afterwards. This is Singapore. This is Rosberg, Hamilton, Spa, 2014. This is all those things. But yeah, so basically what we had was Daniel Ricciardo coming up the back straight. He jinks to the right. He makes a move. It seems to be covered off. He tries to dive back inside. There's no room. Verstappen makes sure of that. They collide. Unbelievably, these two super talented potential future world champions in the most expensive machinery in the world, in a team that's won 4 Constructors' World Championships, they go and spin off into turn 1, and everybody around the world is holding their head in their hands. Now, for me, Brad, it's got to be Max Verstappen. He's moved too many times. He's blocked too many times. Daniel Ricciardo, he's made a legal overtake. He's been completely surprised by Max doing that, tried to get out the way, and they've collided. I'm putting this on Max, and Twitter was not happy with me. That's the most notifications I've had in a while. I'm sorry, he's made a legal overtake. At no point was he even within 10 meters of the back of Max until they actually crashed. So there certainly was no overlap or even a hint of there ever being an overlap. So I'm not quite sure where you got a legal overtake from. But can I just, before we get deeply into this discussion, can I just point out that I might be taking my position defending one of these drivers in the same way that a lawyer who doesn't 100% believe in their client's innocence is going to defend them to the best of their ability. I appreciate that. I don't think any lawyer would actually ever argue against something he didn't believe in. I find that preposterous. But give us the case. I
literally checked with my lawyer fiance about that before I said that.
So basically, you're giving us the case for the defence. I think the case for the prosecution is me saying that Max Verstappen has basically moved a couple of times, which I don't think you're allowed to do. Daniel Ricciardo has hit him. He's an innocent victim trying to get out of the way. So what is the case for the defence?
Okay, so here's how I see it. And I think if you'll take a long, repeated look at the onboard of my defendant's car as he approaches turn 1 on that particular lap, what you're going to notice is that Max is driving towards turn 1, clearly defending, as in driving on the inside line, trying to make his teammate go around the outside of him. As his teammate approaches in the slipstream, Max covers the inside, but leaves about a car's width to the inside. Daniel Ricciardo moves to the right, and as was clarified by Charlie Whiting in a rules clarification at the end of last year, they're not going to be particularly kind of black and white or clear cut on how they penalise moves in and around the braking area. So Max sees Ricciardo go towards the right, kind of feigns covering him off, and Ricciardo decides he'll go towards the inside, which there was never very much space, and he was certainly not really close enough to make an out-braking manoeuvre at that point. My client, Max, doesn't really turn the steering wheel very far at all, a couple of degrees at most, and Ricciardo realises there's not enough time for me to slow down, not enough space for me to go down the inside anymore, and brakes too hard, locks up, hits the back of his teammate. Thus, the fault is entirely laid at the feet of Daniel Ricciardo. And I would just like to preemptively point out, before this gets brought up, that, first of all, I'm yet to see the specific rule that says you're not allowed to move at all in the braking area. And secondly, having studied very closely both drivers' onboards and listened to their engine notes, Max did not move in the braking area. He had not braked at the point he made his very gentle move towards the inside, while still leaving almost a full car's width for Daniel to dive up the inside if he needed to. I think Max was taken entirely by surprise by the thump up the backside he got from his teammate. The defence rests.
The court will now hear from the prosecution's witness. Is he ready? Yes, Your Honour. The prosecution would like to call Alex Van Gien to the bench. Reluctantly, Your Honour, and apologies if he headbutts the microphone or just falls around at any point during his evidence.
So, the way I see it from my...
Objection!
Sustained. Anil.
So the way I see it is when Daniel was approaching... Oh, by the way, you're right, by the way, Brad, on the no break, the rule about braking, about not moving in the braking zone. That was taken away after it was put in. It was put in, and a few races later it was taken out. So you're right on that. However, one rule that's always... I say a rule, I can't say I've actually seen it in the actual rules because I haven't read them, but it's always been the case that
a rule that's not in the rules. Interesting.
I don't know if it's not.
Way to speak, Alex.
You can't move, you can't defend twice. So you can only move once. And Max definitely moved twice. And when he moved twice, he's come across the front wing of Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo has lost downforce, and then that's why he's locked up and gone into the back of Max. Max moved twice. That's the big thing.
I'll wait for Anil to speak and then respond.
I feel like I'm under loads of pressure now, as if Bradley is actually like a lawyer, and if my argument isn't good, then Ricciardo suffers repercussions.
Make it good then.
Let's keep in mind every overtake Ricciardo had done up to that point had been around the outside on Max. He sells him a bit of a dummy. I think Verstappen just should not have bothered moving left. At that point, there was no way that either of them were going to make the corner. I think it caught Ricciardo by surprise. The argument David Coulthard made, which I very much disagree with, but I understand where he's coming from, was Ricciardo should have known that Max would be willing to move twice, and he should have preempted it.
Which however, I might point out is entirely with it. Well, no, continue.
Right. So the point on that is, I understand what he's saying, because throughout the history of Formula One, and even in recent years, you have to preempt how the driver you're racing will react in the situation. And we've spoken about this before. Drivers play mind games with each other. They understand what they will do. I don't think Daniel would have thought his teammate would do it to him. We've seen Verstappen do this to other drivers. He really annoyed Kimi Räikkönen a couple of years ago in Hungary. But to do it against his own teammate, it was just the most unnecessary incident to get yourself involved in. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if Ricciardo overtakes him and gets ahead, because at least it's his teammate, and maybe he'll catch him again on the next lap, or at least he's going to pick up points. That was a risk he should never, ever have taken against his teammate. And I don't think Ricciardo expected it.
Brad, I don't like that argument. I don't like that. That's kind of like he was asking for it, so it's okay.
Though I appreciate the fallacy presented within Anil's argument there. Since it harms my client, I'm not going to expand on it. What I'm going to do, though, is just touch upon what Alex said. He said that Max moved across Daniel's nose. I don't think there's any crime being committed by a driver affecting the downforce level of his of a car following him. That's not Max's fault or concern in the slightest. In terms of moving twice, there has to be some significance in terms of the move. And Max was so gentle with the steering wheel. It was his customary, I'm going to gently turn the steering wheel and let you make the decision, that he's done frequently. If you're saying a driver isn't allowed to move before a corner whilst there's a following car, then drivers are no longer allowed to take the racing line or open up a corner before they turn in towards an apex, or do that and then also defend. Max did no major movements of the steering. I think Daniel Ricciardo just misjudged this one. And I'd like to, before you go to Anil in the chat room, I'd just like to present one final piece of evidence, which is the prosecution's... no, sorry, I don't know how this... I don't know what Daniel Ricciardo's legal position is in this courtroom, but Daniel Ricciardo's own testimony that he just was obviously quite apologetic himself. He didn't at any point lay the blame with Max or entirely. He wasn't angry at him. Neither driver went up to another one and kind of berated them publicly. I think Daniel realised he made a mistake here, and I think Max has very little to answer for.
Right. I disagree so much, and you just made the point of he didn't turn too left. He just turned a little bit left. He's still turning left after turning right after Ricciardo's committed to that line.
In relation to what, though? In relation to the racing line?
In relation to going straight.
Order! You are in contempt of my mixing desk, and I have turned you down because I want to get to the chat room. What are they making of this at the moment, Peter?
They've just gone mental.
Yeah, that happens.
European, at the end of the day, both drivers did something irresponsible. End of. That's very conclusive. Christopher Burns, Verstappen was sold a bunny and he spat it back in Danny Rick's face.
Dummy even? Also, maybe a dummy.
He adds, let's just blame Ericsson for everything and move on.
Can I please just also take a comment from the chat room, which I think is a very, very apt comment from, apologies for the pronunciation, Othniel Gallimore, who says, at some point, one of those dive bomb overtakes from Ricciardo was going to cause an accident. And I think this was one. I think he's become so confident in his ability to make a very late move stick that he just went too late on a driver who was never going to give him that room.
All right. I'm going to break this down into something a little bit more. No.
So can I ask a question from the chat room? We don't know. The chat room's been debating whether the two-move rule exists anymore. So does it?
Just making some notes for my edit. Hold on, guys.
Okay.
No. Me. 47. Edit. Pre-rule. Okay, so I'm going to cut in there, as far as anyone knows, seamlessly, and read you the rules. Now, I do have some sympathy to people who thought that this rule had been removed. Now, I remember when we were really, really arguing tons and tons about the Hamilton and Rosberg battles, we wanted clarification on these rules. And actually, very little exists on what the exact ruling is for racing. And especially once you get into the corner, it becomes very, very vague. Now, there are specific rules. There was 2 rules that are relevant here. One was introduced when Michael Schumacher nearly ran Rubens Barrichello off the road, and that is the rule that you could not make more than one movement. And if you made a second movement, that second movement could only be back to the racing line. And if you did make that second movement back to the racing line, then you had to leave a car's width for a car coming through. Now, in the 2018 regulations, that is absent in the main body of the sporting regulations. There was also another rule, which was the Verstappen rule about moving in the braking zone. And that one is less relevant to today, and that was completely taken away. And I was sure this rule still existed, and I was sure I heard mention that they were going to penalise drivers for moving more than once. Now, why I say I have sympathy for people who couldn't find this today is because it was Matt Trumpets that rescued me. It is, in fact, in Annex L, or Appendix L, of the International Sporting Code. Hands up, who has read the annexes of the sporting code. My hand remains strictly down.
Who hasn't? Honestly.
And I thought I was quite good for having read the sporting codes at all for these kind of incidents. But in Chapter 5, Section 2, overtaking, car control and track limits, in paragraph B, more than one change of direction to defend a position is not permitted. It's as simple as that. Any driver moving back towards the racing line, having earlier defended his position, should leave at least one car's width between his car and the edge of the track on approach to the corner. So even if...
Sorry, Spanners, can you please just repeat that exact phrase?
Absolutely.
Did I hear you say moving back towards the racing line?
Towards the racing line. Now, Brad, I'm sure you would agree that the racing line was on the right-hand side at the point of contact.
I do agree.
So he wasn't moving back to the racing line at all. So
no need to leave that space.
There was no need to leave that space, but the fact is it was the second move and therefore not permitted in Annex L of the Sporting Regulations 2018.
But Spanners, I, as I'm sure you're aware, as judge presiding over this courtroom,
oh right, cool. In that case, guilty
in this situation, and we have a body of evidence suggesting that the precedent in terms of what is and isn't penalised in terms of this specific situation where one driver makes small, relatively insignificant multiple moves on a straight approaching a corner, they are not penalised. That is the precedent. That's what Max was working within, and that is why he wasn't significantly penalised.
Is there such a thing as an insignificant move at 220 miles an hour? You don't have to turn the steering wheel very much at over 200 miles an hour to cover a lot of distance. And the fact is, from the video evidence, he clearly goes right as Danny went right. And then as Danny goes left, he then clearly goes left. That is two defined, clear moves, the second of which went nowhere near the racing line.
Read Annex L, Brad.
And the precedent for the punishment for that, or for whether or not the authorities are going to give any kind of credence to that annex, is that it is not upheld, it's not enforced. It's like saying that football, in Appendix 15L of the British common law, is that you're not allowed to play football on Sundays. The precedent is that it's still in the regulations, but it is no longer enforced. In the same way that there are various laws, lots of archaic laws in many constitutions and law establishments of various countries that are just, they never write them out of the rules because there's just no point. But in the same way that, for example, you have to have a certain religion to hold office in certain states in America, the precedent is that that is no longer the case. The law is still there, but it's not ever adhered to. And I think that's exactly the same in this situation.
But if you're going by the letter of the law, when it comes to things in court, it's the stuff that is written down and is actually legally binding that wins you the argument. And
it's not.
Not
if the governing body or the authorities no longer care about that rule.
I've watched enough Suits to know that they can cover any loophole just by the fact they found something written down that is legally binding.
Look, just because you've seen the whole of the most recent series of Suits and I haven't seen it yet, don't get all Suitsy on me.
I'll spoil the ending for you if you're not careful.
Okay, we've moved into a weird territory now. But look, I think to me it's pretty clear by the letter of the rules, if that was going to be enforced, then Max Verstappen should be penalised, should have a grid penalty, in my opinion, for making two moves. It's something you're not allowed to do. In my opinion, Daniel Ricciardo had every right to expect that after his first dummy had been bought, he could then go to the inside, commit to that move. He did commit to that move. Max Verstappen covered him off. Ricciardo had no plan B for if Max did that.
Ricciardo, you nearly made me say his name incorrectly. Ricciardo would not have made the corner if he hadn't hit the back of Max. He braked too late, regardless of where Max positioned the car.
Well, speculation, Your Honour.
Yeah, sustained. All right, cool.
I love this. This is great.
I tell you what, let's randomly. I was going to say let's let Peter decide, but I've just realised that he told me before that he thinks it was Ricciardo's fault, so I don't want to let him decide that. We need to find another way to decide.
We could decide by just moving on to the Raikkonen-Ocon incident, which we seem to have missed at the start of the race, because we can probably all agree on that.
Okay,
maybe it's just a racing incident. It's no one's fault.
No, what? It's always someone's fault. I don't bring you on here to sit and agree and debate. It's always someone's fault. For this one, it seemed pretty clear to me. Ocon just got a bit impetuous, did not want to leave that space, was guarding his position, and he's just wiped Kimi Raikkonen out. Kimi Raikkonen, just the worst luck.
Yeah, I totally agree. What was he doing? Good. He just turned in as if he wasn't there.
Well,
there was so much room to let him. There was
Yeah.
so much room to get 2 cars through that corner.
but Ocon's got previous on that corner. He does not want to yield. So let's go on.
That's his own prerogative. He can crash then, can't he?
Let's go on to the slightly more interesting than one. Brad, 3 abreast. Alonso, Sergei Sirotkin, and I believe Carlos Sainz on the right-hand side. Alonso, somewhat of an innocent victim, but whose fault was it?
I haven't really seen enough camera angles to give a brilliantly informed opinion, but it looked to me that whichever Renault was on the far right-hand side moved to the left slightly, and that made Sirotkin move to his left slightly, and then Alonso got tagged. It seemed pretty straightforward, although weirdly Sirotkin seemed to be penalised for that, if that was the incident that he was penalised for.
I'm in agreement with that.
Good.
Yeah, I agree.
Does anyone else feel a bit stressed after our Ricardo Verstappen argument? I feel really like the stakes were high. Brad just brought it to a completely different level.
You weren't expecting my defence.
I was, but I'm grinning ear to ear, but I know you well enough. So
I will say that your arguing skills were better than your actual body of evidence. So kudos at least to that.
I'm going to scroll back through our WhatsApp chat and try and read what I actually wrote in our WhatsApp chat at the time it happened.
That is private correspondence. Don't share any of my kitten conversations. But I tell you what we will do. Let's move on a little bit, because me and Anil have had a bit of a running debate since pre-season. In fact, Anil, I would argue that we've been having that debate for about 4 years. Ever since Renault joined in, you said they were immediately going to win the World Championship, and I've tolerated your Renault musings for the last few years. But this season, you were really adamant that Renault was going to do well. I said no. I think Force India are going to beat them. There is a pint and a cookie on the line. And I will admit that for a little bit of that race, I was slightly nervous. But then, of course, the result shows that, Force India are miles ahead. They dominated Renault in the end. Dominated.
You're talking so much rubbish. And I love how this whole Renault thing, before it was 2 years ago you said this, 3 years ago. Now you're saying, in 2014, when Pastor Maldonado was driving for Lotus, and Neil called it that Renault were going to win the title in 2018. You're talking rubbish. Perez drove an amazing race today. They've been quick all weekend, and I do wonder if it will be a one-off. I think it might be, and Perez seemed to say after the race he didn't really expect them to match that performance, but it just seems that chassis or the DNA of that chassis on that circuit just really suits them. And I think he's now the most successful driver at this circuit with 2 podiums, which is quite a statistic.
Get out. So Sergio Perez is the most successful Baku Grand Prix driver. And how much of a big Perez fan I am. Part of the reason why I cheer on Force India. But I was not following his race at all. He wasn't a feature. And then all of a sudden, Vettel finds himself lagging in 4th place. Perez is overtaking him. Well, where did that come from? Why have I not been cheering that on the whole race?
Right, and I think when the second safety car came out towards the end, he made up a lot of places by not making a pit stop, or he seemed to be on the slowest tyre while everyone else was on the ultra soft. And he said after the race, those were the best 2 laps of his life, because he was expecting to look at the cars behind him, not only getting a run down the straight, but having more grip throughout the rest of the lap. But in the end, other drivers fell apart. The Red Bulls took themselves out. Again, Perez picks up the pieces.
He's so good at that. When tyres are crucial, Perez is on it. And I think he might have, at one point, said he'd picked up a thing or two from Kamui Kobayashi when they were at Sauber, if I'm remembering things right. What a ledge. But Perez has this kind of real kind of talent for when there is something on the line to take, he takes it. And what a difference between that and Hülkenberg, who twice at Baku could have been on a podium or was on for a really great result, and through no contact with anyone else has just binned it.
Right, we should point out, and I was quite confused by this after the race, Perez had a 5-second time penalty, but he took it under the safety car. Now, I did not know this was actually allowed in the rules, but I was very confused at the end of the race because he finished 3rd, but had he taken the 5-second penalty then, he actually would have finished 7th. So I found it quite strange watching him celebrate, because I was a bit like, oh, when did he take the penalty? But apparently the rules allow you to take those penalties during a safety car. And, if the rules didn't allow that, he would have finished quite far back. But they gambled on taking it under the safety car. They put on a set of softs, I think it was, and it worked for them.
big slice of luck. But once again, when he picks up a podium, where was his teammate? Peter, what's going on in the chat room? Let's say one final hello to them.
Well, after your ding dong, Phil C said, order in the shed. And European...
I should have said that. Oh.
And they're wanting an appeal show tomorrow.
That can be arranged.
So, yeah, that's what's going on. And as a discussion about constitutional law, which I think is for another day.
There are some brilliant comments popping up. I've already singled out a few that I think should be comment of the week.
We can definitely address that when we go towards comment of the week. But we're moving very quickly towards the podium. As of late, I've decided that we can let these race reviews go on a little bit longer. Apologies to those guys who like the shorter form shows. Split it into two. Call it 2 shows. But on the race reviews, there's often so much to talk about. And this is when we're most excited. But Brad... And Jeansy as well, actually. We're all people who wish Lewis Hamilton well. We like the British drivers to do well. We particularly like Lewis Hamilton and would say we are supporters of him, I think. However, even though he's won this race, all throughout the weekend and during the race and even after the race, we've been talking about Lewis Hamilton in a big slump. And I said, well, his slumps don't normally last this long, but it is clear that the slump even extended to this race, and it's a fluke. This win, he's put himself at least in the position to take it. I would say there's not many drivers who wouldn't have won in that car today. What you said to me, Jeansy, was Lewis Hamilton seemed normal.
Yeah, he's just not he hasn't been electric. If you look at any body language that you've seen from any interview that he's had, he doesn't look up. He hasn't got that glint in his eye of he's hungry for this. He's just been going through the motions, which we all know from many years of watching it. A happy Lewis is a fast Lewis, and I haven't seen a happy Lewis pretty much since he won the title, if I'm brutally honest.
I'd flip that the other way around and say that glint in his eye and that happiness would be there if he was faster. I think he's in a position at the moment where he is generally being outperformed by his teammate in a lot of sessions, in several of the races this year. And I think that's why he doesn't appear his outwardly joyous self. I have to say, though, I really thought his attitude post-race was commendable. The way he commiserated with Bottas. I'm not, the world's biggest Lewis Hamilton fan. I'm reasonably neutral in most matters, Formula One, but I like to see him do well if he's performing well. And anyway, after the race, I thought his lack of celebration and his the way he kept mentioning how this was Bottas's race and how well he'd driven, I thought that was really good to see. I thought it was a great attitude.
I think if you'd have given Lewis a podium after Friday practice, I think he'd have taken it. That's how poor Lewis's weekend was.
Right, so do we think this is down to the tyres then? Because I remember a few races last year, and this is where the whole diva thing came up, where Bottas outperformed Lewis early in the year. I think it was Monaco and Russia. And there was a lot of talk. Lewis is struggling a little bit with the tyres, but as the season went on, Mercedes seemed to be able to kind of eliminate that problem. And from then on, he was comfortably the faster of the 2 Mercedes drivers. He made Bottas look quite average at times, especially over 1 lap. So I just wonder, given that the tyres are softer this year, and we're going to races where he just seems to be struggling slightly to get the most out of them. He was better. He beat Bottas in qualifying. Yeah. I should point that out. It's not like he was terrible on Saturday.
So when we talk about tyres, we're talking about, I suppose, getting them into the right operating window, and this looks to be a little bit of a weakness. What we didn't see today, which would have been intriguing, was Bottas at the front of a stint with the soft tyres in the same way that Hamilton struggled to stay ahead of Verstappen. If we'd have then seen Bottas come in and have that same struggle, then maybe we could have said, oh no, that is just a feature of the car and the tyre combination. But if we'd have seen him get out there and get straight on the pace, we could have perhaps seen that. Or we could be saying that if the tyres aren't optimal to the car, he's not driving around it, i.e. he doesn't have a plan B, which is what we were talking about. But Brad, I'm much more inclined to just think he's just having a not good vein of form. That seems to be the most obvious and easy answer to what's happening.
So first of all, just very briefly, I think with the tyre thing, there's two slightly different things. There's the tyre warm-up and how easily the driver warms up those tyres. And then there's the tyre preservation and how well they look after them over a stint. It seems to me like Bottas was potentially better in both of those areas, certainly the tyre preservation this weekend. In regards to whether it's just a slump for Hamilton or whether Bottas is actually just raising his game, I tend to think at the moment it's still... maybe a combination of both. I think Bottas is genuinely doing better this year. I think the way that the car is performing suits him slightly better than it did last year, for whatever reason. But I think also Lewis is, for some reason, struggling more than you'd expect him to. And I think those things are converging to make him look a bit normal and to make Bottas look slightly better than him at the moment. I'm really interested to see how it pans out.
And it's easy to say he's struggling with the tyres because the first thing we hear when he's struggling is him going on the radio saying, oh, I've got no grip, these tyres are shot. He seems to always say there's a problem with the tyres a lot quicker than the other drivers. In my mind at the moment, I'm starting to suspect that when things aren't going well, he's looking for a reason. He's looking for a scapegoat almost. But if you have been performing at that higher level for so long, like Lewis Hamilton has, when things aren't going well, you're going to be looking for something. And a very easy thing to do is say, well, these tyres aren't working for me. But Brad, today, there was a very obvious revealing of that falseness because he complained about his tyres. He eventually flat spotted them and said, no, I've got to go in. And then Bottas kind of showed that that's ridiculous. He was pulling away in Hamilton's second stint. Bottas was still able to pull a gap, and we were thinking about whether he was going to pull a pit window on Hamilton. So, that's where I'm leaning.
Yeah, this reminds me a little bit. So if you're a driver who's won 4 world championships and you've always been one of the very fastest guys in the world for basically your whole career, and Hamilton's won, anything he's ever tried his hand at and always been extremely good, you obviously build up a lot of self-belief. And when things aren't going right, I would imagine you don't think it's you to begin with. You're going to think of all the other avenues that it probably is. And it reminds me of the season where Vettel was beaten by Ricciardo convincingly, where he must have been going through a similar thing where he's won for all these years. He's dominated the championship for several years. And then his teammates beating him and he's struggling a bit. And I think it's a car specific thing. Something about the interaction between that car and those tyres and the way the racing is this year, he's just not quite getting to grips with. And it's such fine margins, as it always is in Formula One, that it becomes a big thing. And he hasn't found a cure for it yet.
Let's move on to the podium. The podium is all about shows and awards. Bradley Philpott, you have been very impressed with the actual show that Liberty have been putting on.
Yeah, I keep raving about it, don't I? From everything from the theme music, the new graphics. I just really like what they're doing with the sport. The only negative in that side of things I saw today was occasionally they cut to a replay from a certain lap, and it would come up with a screen telling you what lap the replay was about to be on, which would stay on for 30 seconds or so. And then they'd show the replay, and then the screen would come back up again, and you weren't sure whether you were seeing another replay from that lap or whether they were just closing that particular replay. Apart from that slightly unnecessary delay in that slide, I thought what they've done with the graphics on the halo and all that kind of thing is really positive.
Yeah, the halo's a big thing, isn't it, Anil? Because they've turned what is basically a bug, which is seeing that halo, into a feature.
Yeah, they've made it look quite cool during race trim. They do very similar things with Formula E, where they have all these kind of fancy on-screen graphics, and they've kind of just said, well, the onboards of the Halo don't look great, so let's see what we can do with them. But just going back to Bradley's point about the kind of the race intros, the theme music, a lot of people complained on Twitter and Facebook, like, oh, Formula One doesn't need a theme song, they're ruining it, they're making it too American. The intro is epic, because, it has the music. It then comes with I think it's like stats about the race, the best overtaking points. Then it has the tires, and then it does the grid, and it's such a good intro, and they deserve a lot of credit for setting up the race like that.
Yeah, people are like, oh, it's too American. What's your favorite TV show? Game of Thrones, Walking Dead. What networks do you watch that on? Netflix, Amazon. Let's stop being all weird and English about Americanisms. The Americans know how to do entertainment, so I was very happy when Liberty took over, and I felt they were going to bring that American showmanship, and I'm glad it's starting to seep through. But this is the point in the show where we start to give out awards. So let's do the good thing first. Who got your thing of the weekend? Alex Jeansy Van Gene.
You never come to me first. So, thing of the weekend. I've got loads and loads of things written down for thing of the weekend. So, because I'm first, I've decided to steal something from Brad. I think it's Fernando Alonso hitting the pit wall on the way to the pits.
Yeah, but
Sorry, Brad. I couldn't resist that. I even have written down Fernando hitting pit wall.
You didn't
steal
even
from Brad.
see it. You didn't even see it. I told you about it, and you said what?
We're going to allow it. Yeah, the fact are you giving it the award? The fact that he managed to stay fully out of the pit wall.
Do you know what? I'll let Brad have that one because he's right. I was doing that just to wind Brad up. To be fair, my actual thing of the weekend was that Red Bull battle up until the very, very end. That thing was superb. It showed that in 2018 you can have wheel-to-wheel racing up until a point, but it was just spectacular because they did show each other a lot of respect until that last moment.
Yeah, let's make no mistake. Max Verstappen is quality for F1 content at the moment. Whatever we think about his driving, he is good for F1. You know, maybe if he brings it back from the brink a little bit, but at the moment, this is great for the sport we love. Bradley Philpott, who is your thing of the weekend?
Okay, since my good one was stolen from me, I'll give you a different one. A bit left field. I loved Roman Grosjean's engineer coming on the radio and saying, yeah, we think Ericsson hit you when Grosjean binned it on his own. That was my thing of the weekend.
I thought it was actually Grosjean that said, did Ericsson hit us? But was it actually the team, was it?
I think it was an engineer who had just seen the TV footage of the car going in the wall, and Grosjean just said, no, or something like that. And the engineer said, I think Ericsson hit us. That's what I think.
When I heard that radio call of the no, that is the war cry of somebody who knows he has absolutely dropped it. And Neil Palmer, who is your thing of the weekend?
I was going to pick Alonso for his drive back through the field, but I'm going to give it to Charles Leclerc because he was absolutely amazing Saturday and Sunday.
We didn't get to that. We didn't get to that at all. But not only was he amazing Saturday, Sunday, he was also been amazing compared to his teammate. Now, people were starting to tell me, Anil, that, oh, look, Ericsson's actually not that bad, is he? And I was saying to them, oh, my goodness, reversion to the mean. Just give it a few races. And it's not just a little bit. It's stark now. And I'm kind of glad. I want the Ericsson myth to disappear.
Right, and if Leclerc can do that for a couple more races, then I think Ericsson's going to start getting pretty nervous because it was pretty one-sided this weekend. In fact, Ericsson went off on his outlap to the grid. He actually got stuck in one of the escape zones because the wind blew him off. So, there's real pressure on him.
I dream of a day where Formula One is the 20 best drivers in the world competing in the greatest machinery on the planet in the world's most fantastic sport. It hurts me. It hurts. There's a couple of drivers on the grid and you just go, okay, it's a necessary evil. We've had it worse at certain points in the past, but I do dream of that day. Peter Goodchild, thank you so much for looking after the chat room for us today. I would like your personal, not the chat rooms, I would like your personal thing of the weekend, please.
It was the racing. It was amazing. The Renaults and the Red Bulls going at it, all four of them, and then the two Red Bulls. There were 6 times those two Red Bulls came near each other. It was brilliant. I couldn't take my eyes off it.
No, it was really a fantastic spectacle. And this whole season, I think so far has been great. We've got a good season to look forward to. I don't have, Peter, oh no, I missed the apex from my son. So if you could just say to me in a shocked and surprised fashion, oh no, you missed the apex.
Oh no, you missed the apex.
That was just bad enough to use like going forward all the time. Alex Van Gene, who missed the apex for you, buddy?
The Sky Sports grid walk. Martin Brundle wasn't there this weekend, and they had lasers and the rest are doing it, and they had one cameraman. And they went off in different directions, couldn't get interviews off of people, and the camera had to keep running between the two. It was an absolute nightmare. Considering Sky are generally so slick, that was a shambles.
Let's go to Bradley Philpott, who missed the apex for you.
Sebastian Vettel missed the apex convincingly, attempting to pass Valtteri Bottas.
It's amazing, really, the things we could have spent 20 minutes talking about in this race that have just been kind of shunned. I think we mentioned it for about 10 seconds, but when we look back at the end of the season and Lewis Hamilton has, for example, won by 10 points, they're going to be playing replays over and over again of that turn 1 lockup.
Yeah, I just think that was I was going to say uncharacteristic error, but he has made errors over the years, and I think it was just misjudged, and he actually got off quite lightly considering how big a mistake it was.
Anil Palmer, who missed the apex?
It could only be Romain Grosjean, which to what I can describe as the best incident I've ever seen. I need to see a GIF of someone changing, of adding a Mario Kart style red shell from Ericsson's car hitting Grosjean. It needs to happen. So if anyone's listening and you know how to make it happen, just do it. He is under real pressure, Grosjean, because he's always whining and Magnussen's driving better, and that was a big mistake.
I just realised before I go to Peter, I never did my thing of the weekend, and my thing of the weekend is Valtteri Bottas. Absolutely gutted for him because he's not had the best of luck. He's been heavily criticised for his racing, but he's stuck true to his line. And like I said, I think he deserved the opportunity to win today. He deserved the opportunity to be in the lead at the safety car and to take advantage of that safety car. And it was heartbreaking because I saw that bit of debris. As he was driving towards it, I saw that bit of debris, and as soon as he went over it and I saw it flick from the front straight out of his back underneath the bottom wheel, I thought, that's a big piece of debris that is going to puncture, and I was just sat there holding my breath, waiting for it. And in fact, I think I'd said to you guys on the safety car restart, this is too exciting. I will speak to you all later in our WhatsApp group. And then I just couldn't help but come back in screaming various voice notes. And I had considered playing my voice notes on the show, but I'm definitely not going to. Valtteri Bottas has left this weekend with his head held high and definitely has my thing of the weekend. Peter Goodchild, who missed the apex for you?
I was going to have the ridiculously overinflated pre-start celebrations, but I think it's got to be Lewis's hair.
Do you know what? That is not unfair. For a guy who is so stylish, there is no way that anybody objectively can say that that is a good hair. Even Jeansy has to admit that that is a poor choice.
It's really difficult. Being Lewis Hamilton, he makes it so hard sometimes to be a Lewis Hamilton fan. He does
come on, that's the kind
things like that.
I'm pretty sure there's a bet going on between the drivers just who can turn up with the worst haircut, because Vettel had that weird aerodynamic haircut a few weeks ago as well. It's weird when you've got that much money. Why can't you just look? Jeansy looks great. He looks young. He's 16. That's what you want.
Yeah, Bob Varsha said his style was the result of a lot of $10 haircuts. If it's good enough for Bob Varsha, it's good enough for me. Has anybody got a pony award, by the way? Raise your hands now if you have one. Okay, then, let's play this.
Of course.
Daddy, I want a pony. And I want it now.
Who's your pony award, Brad?
Okay, so I'm going to give my pony award, first of all, with a quote, and I'm going to let you decide who this is. Clearly, I had a great start, really good. I managed to overtake him in turn 2. I was ahead of him on the straight. I was completely ahead. He was behind. I don't know what he did. He released the brakes and hit me. Who was that on lap 1? It's obviously Esteban Ocon, who is very incorrect in his assessment of that particular situation.
Any other ponies, guys?
I would definitely agree with that, actually. Sometimes I just wish a driver would admit when they're wrong instead of just trying to make up this elaborate story. Yeah, it's definitely Ocon.
To be fair, pretty much everyone who had a radio message on the first lap deserves a pony. Every single one was someone, wasn't me, when pretty much it was everybody. They were rather like idiots.
I do wonder how they choose those radio messages, because when Lewis Hamilton's having an off weekend, for example, they really do play a lot of his intercom chat. And whenever it goes and you see the Hamilton icon, you think, oh, God. oh, what's this going to be now? I think, some drivers do come off a lot better than others. Roman Grosjean was trying to make the case that, oh, no, I'm not really whiny, you English pig dog. It is just the edit and the audio that they choose to pick all his whiny comments. Well, I suppose they've got to be there in the first place, haven't they? Guys, fantastic race review. Thanks for subbing in. How do you feel being in Matt Trumpet's chair, Brad?
It's been really good. It's nice to get some more of the airtime. Thank you very much.
Where can people find you, Brad?
You can find me on Twitter at Bradley Philpott, on Facebook, Bradley Philpott Motorsport. And I'd like to, in particular, promote my YouTube channel, which if you just search for Bradley Philpott on YouTube, you'll find my new series of videos, which I'm currently creating, which is learning the Nürburgring in under an hour. I've produced 2 of those videos. The rest will be coming in the next couple of weeks. So an easy 8 or 9 minute video split into 5 separate videos to help you learn the Nordschleife in under an hour. So look for that and subscribe.
I tell you what, Bradley Philpott is one of these guys who has an uncanny knack of being able to just put a phone up in front of him and saying things and making it interesting. You don't push your YouTube channel enough. Use this platform to push it. That's an order, sunshine.
So yeah, everybody search for my name, Bradley Philpott, on YouTube. Click subscribe.
And Neil Palmer, where can people find you? Obviously, you're going to be too busy lining up my pints and cookies because Force India are bossing it.
Oh, gee, spammers. You've got no chance, but I don't have a YouTube channel. I'm not as exciting as our friend Bradley, but you can find me on Twitter at AnilP228.
AnilP228. Alex Jinsey Van Gene, karting extraordinaire. A, what are you up to? And B, where can people find you?
Due to having just had a baby, so I have a little 2-week-old little girl who is wonderful.
Babies are terrible.
Yeah, but she's wonderful at the moment. She's great. However, it does sap all my money away, so there's no karting at the moment for me. If you want to keep up with me, I'm on at Alex Van Gene. I have got a GT3 series on Project Cars, which we will actually start soon having live streams of the race with commentary. So as soon as that gets working, because we had internet issues last time, we'll be able to. I'll share all those on the group.
Don't worry, chat room. I haven't forgotten about comment of the week. Thanks for reminding me, chat room. But for the record, this is the first time that Jeansy and Brad Philpott have actually been on the panel together. You two are very good friends. I will say, though, Brad, I'm just going to defend Jeansy for a bit because he's like a little puppy dog. Everyone thinks you're like super nice on this show. You're very mean to Jeansy.
He brings it upon himself.
The difference is he's mean to me in front of other people. I'm incredibly mean to him when it's one-on-one.
I think you should, in front of other people's cleverer. I think you should have done that. We've had a very good and competent chat room host, Peter Goodchild. Firstly, I will have my vengeance on you at this upcoming kart meeting or the next. And secondly, how have you found sitting in the chat room host chair? Scary.
Fun, scary. Yep. And you won't have your vengeance on me at all, especially if it rains.
No, that's true. One thing I've learned is I'm absolutely useless in the wet. If you haven't heard anything recently about being confirmation of our karting event, it has been thrown up in the air a little bit. There is going to be an alternate track and an alternate date. I am going to wait till I actually put money down this time to tell you the exact details. But I think I've given you enough time to come and do it. I think we found a good price point. We're also going to do our live recording at the same venue on the same day as that karting event. So yes, I may have messed up the organisation on my first attempt, but in the second stab, I think you're going to be pleased. A top track, a good price with a live recording. Now then, Peter Goodchild, it falls to you to nominate a few people for Comment of the Week.
Comment of the Week.
Who we got?
I feel the responsibility weighing heavily on me. Here we go. Chris Fonseca, number 3. If Helmut Marko demotes Hartley, will Verstappen win the race? Number 2, Philip Allen, Red Bull takes stacking out of the pit lane. And number 1.
Oh, that took a while to sink in. Oh, no. That's really bad.
Come on, Evangelos. It's got to be Evangelos.
It's got to be. I don't think it's what you thought it was, said Brad. Brad and Max have that in common. They defend in unexpected ways.
Yeah, that's the one.
Sorry, say that one again because you just tripped over each other a bit.
Brad and Max have that in common. They defend in unexpected ways.
Is that your winner, Peter?
That's my winner.
I think that is a fair shout for
Comment of the Week.
Thank you very much for joining us for our Baku Grand Prix race review. Be sure to join us on Tuesday night, where we're going to have Matthew Summerfield going up against ex-Lotus team boss. Where we're going to have Matthew Summerfield going up against ex-Lotus team boss Matthew Carter as they talk tech. This is one you're going to want to tune in for. Scrutineering, which is where the teams have to answer for their designs of their car, is much more interesting than you think. I promise you'll agree with me. Follow me personally at Spanners Ready and the show at Missed Apex F1. Until next time, remember that wounds heal, chicks dig scars, and glory lasts forever. This was Missed Apex. Also, the first time I think we've also had an all-UK panel. Yeah! Go home, Yanks! Boo! We don't need you! Boo! Go away!
We did have Matt on briefly.
Oh no, it's ruined it! Oh, he was on for 60 seconds, which he took 123 seconds over with his pre-waffle. And that was really good, actually. I really enjoyed the race in 60 seconds bit.
Yeah, really good. We should include that regularly, as long as the race is good. But I guess for Monaco, we could do like a sarcastic one. Where it's like,
Cars went round.
Yeah,
exactly.
I was thinking.
Cars went round. Pit stops. Cars went round.
You're very pessimistic. It's been a great season. I think good stuff's going to happen.
What, in Monaco? It's not going to happen in Monaco, though, is it?
I always enjoy it anyway.
I love the stick that I've got tonight. I made a real effort to get off the floor and do this like you told me to, and they've all taken the piss out of
was absolutely loving all the comments. I don't know whether you saw them.
I've caught that really late.
Like there were so many comments saying, "What's wrong with Alex? Is he in hospital?"
Yeah, I thought you were in hospital.
I hope Alex gets better soon. All this kind of stuff.
I'm quite enjoying like this room roulette Alex has, because whenever I do a pod with him, he's in a different room. So normally I think he's downstairs.
I am still downstairs.
And your miss is always. Okay. Well, normally your miss is always in front.
I'm normally there.
Oh right, so it's the same.
Oh, Alex, not with that. Alex, not with that hairline, mate. Keep the webcam down.
Yeah, whatever. I'm still pretty. It's fine.
We were treated to your wife changing your nappy in the background as well before the stream started.
Not my nappy, Isla's nappy.
No, I have to say right, because babies are terrible, and I cannot stand babies. Now that my kids are older, brilliant. I can't stand them. But my rule is, I will look after your kid if they can poop by themselves. If they poop in a bag, and that's my problem, I'm not doing it. But in an emergency, I had to look after my...
You won't want either of mine at the moment.
I had to look after my friend's little boy, who I absolutely love, and he's 2.5, and that's fine. I said, look, just sit him on the potty before he comes round, at least. They dropped him off. It was an emergency, so happy to do it. Within 5 minutes, he immediately filled it, and I was just like, dude, have you done a poop? He's like, yeah, I have. Yeah, I've done a poop. And you just go, oh, brilliant, thanks.
How old was he?
2.5. The thing is, when they're big enough to have a chat with you, and it's like it's basically an adult poop, isn't it? And they're chatting to you whilst you're like their little slave cleaning their ass. It's just a nightmare. I would never do it again.
Can I just get like away from baby poo and stuff and just very briefly steer some conversation back towards the race?
Podcast's over, Phil Pot. This is where we talk about baby poo.
I said that I was I just defended Max Verstappen obviously very heavily.
No, I really appreciate you doing that. Because I know that wasn't your... Yeah, I know that. That's
because
good.
Actually, in reality, like just for the benefit of everyone who's still here, I do think it was a lot more like the FIA ruled it, as in partial blame to everyone. Nobody acted perfectly. I kind of agree with how everything panned out there. They both deserved to be out of the race. They were naughty. Anyway, at the time it happened, these were my exact words. Am I allowed to swear now?
No.
Okay, I'll beat myself. Yeah. So at the time it happened, my words were in capitals on our WhatsApp group. Totally Verstappen. Max, total fault. What a beep. Oh my God. Wow. Oh, Max, way over the line this time. Hang on. Max didn't actually move very much. What? Now I don't know. Max actually barely moved. Yeah, he did. Yeah, it was Max. Looks different from different angles, but yeah. Ricardo was probably too committed and Max moved. It's not the world's clearest cut thing. Those Red Bulls crashing was always coming, wasn't it?
I want you to be my lawyer.
I know. Look, you can't have just moved a bit. It's like being a bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. You either moved or you didn't move. Clearly,
but you need to. But it is still grey because moving is in relation to something. and you need to tell me what he's moving in relation to.
Ricardo.
Well,
God damn it!
His steering wheel was straighter. He moved it left. By definition, he's turning left.
Because racing tracks aren't all straight. The racing line is very rarely completely straight.
Look, me and Anil.
Yeah, it's not like he's going through poo on here.
You steer.
Me and Anil never agree on anything. The biggest evidence that this is correct is that me and Anil don't agree on stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought it was
agree on
basically
something,
50-50.
you're wrong.
To be honest. Initially, because from some views I thought, oh, that's obviously Verstappen. From other views, I thought he was kind of almost totally blameless, and I ended up 50-50. So I'm glad you appreciated my efforts in defending something I didn't truly believe in.
Irresistible force versus an immovable object.
It's good to know that you all have the race notes open, by the way, when you all started on a huge conversation about Renault, when I had it, clearly about 3/4 of the way down. But apart from that, it was good.
I don't even know how you access the race notes. On a
Oh
computer.
my God, you're the co-host. Yeah, I post them literally every single show.
Post them where?
he's
No, I'm
trolling.
not. I'm not even trolling. Where you post them on WhatsApp, but I can't open that on my computer.
Yes,
that
you
doesn't
can.
Remember, this is the guy that took 6 months to get onto WhatsApp.
Right, what you do? You have to do WhatsApp web. Oh yeah, I remember that. At first,
I've
Brad was like,
literally never heard.
I was saying
no
to-
idea.
16.
I was saying to Brad, yeah, you got to get on WhatsApp in our groups now. He's like, yeah, I'm not 12. But he's there on Facebook Messenger. No, you just do WhatsApp web and you can just get it all on your computer.
Thanks for telling me that. I've got my 3
It's on
screens here.
Google Drive. Oh my God, this is why you're defending Max, right? I bet Max doesn't have access to.
So I've got my 3 screens open. I've got like the YouTube here. I've got the race results. I've got qualifying results. I've got the latest news reports, Formula One's websites.
Wow.
I'm trying to I'll do my best.
This is great. Spanner spends ages making the race document, and you're just like, oh, I'll do what I want.
No, because he then,
Welcome to the
he then
world of Bradley
gave us like this brief before the podcast. I
Yeah.
thought you went
True,
through
true.
everything.
Yeah, Renault was at the end.
Start.
It's all right. It's not a big deal. It's just that, that's how I planned it. It's not a big deal. I mean, I'm pretty easygoing. It's like with timings. I'm pretty easygoing with timings as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're very good at timings. I mean, 6 years ago, Spanners, was it 7 years ago? I told you Renault were going to be really good in 2018.
19 years ago, you
know
said
when
Renault were going to win.
next year. You're going to say that, aren't you?
Yeah.
I've said it since 2012.
Because Matt's not here. Because Matt's not here, right? He's the worst offender with this, with Honda. So he was like, straight away, yeah. Oh, Honda will be great next year. Oh no, this is the season. Oh, they've taken away the token system. This will be their year.
When did the New York person become Texan?
Oh, he's from Atlanta. Matt's from Atlanta.
That was Louisiana.
Same
That wasn't
country.
Texas. That was awful.
Or whatever it was.
Now I'm just a simple country chicken. But yeah, so
I don't do accents.
Anyway, lads, I need to go before me and Spanners get into this Renault Force India debate, but it's been a pleasure.
it's not a debate. It's in the bag.
But
But I hung up before I could answer.
I also need to go. I think.
Yeah, go.
Because, but I thought we were supposed to hang around for this bit. I didn't want to just abandon everyone.
You are not
so-
obliged to hang around for this bit at all.
No, but I want to.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I've annoyed my other half in various ways this
That's
week.
not
Some of them major, and she's put up with me watching motorsport all weekend, having a friend over to stay, even watching British touring cars once the Formula One had finished, and then spending the rest of my evening in the garage talking to you lovely people. And I get the impression, she's not made it that clear, I get the impression that she might like me to come into the house at some point. So I might go and do that, as long as you're okay with me doing
You
that.
told me you've got a VLN race after this online.
Oh, no. I'm not on the simulator. ages.
I'm going to take it out of your hands, Bradley. I think the biggest revelation of 2018 for us has been how well you've stepped in when there's only been one of the 3 producers available. Thank you very much for embracing that role and taking a little bit more on. Thank you.
That's not a problem. Thank you very much.
Now-
And have a lovely evening.
Get away.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. So how whipped is Bradley Philpott, Jeansy?
Oh, she shouts at him all the time.
It's quite funny.
It's hilarious when we're out. It's hilarious.
He sent a picture of something, I don't know, something to do with their reaction on F1, or he's taken a picture of his cat, and his girlfriend just happened to be in the background looking incredibly unimpressed with everything during the most exciting F1 race I think I can remember.
Hilarious. God, I hope he's not listening. Hilariously. Yeah, you got to cut this out.
Oh, no, I can't.
Hilariously-
This is in the post-show
No, it's
waffle.
fine.
so-
No, it's not. It's
Okay.
not. No. Hilarious. When they started dating, it's the whole thing. When you start dating, is she said, "Yeah, I love racing. I always used to watch it." and in the last 3 or 4 years. She doesn't care for racing at all. Calls karting T-tray racing. Yeah, she's completely done with motorsport.
Yeah, that's the same with my wife and various other things, mainly in the... Yeah, anyway. Peter, from the outside then, you've been watching this a long time and you've jumped on. Obviously, you saw all our pre-show stuff before we clicked the stream on. And I was thinking, like, I was going through this, and I'm arguing with Jeansy because he's used a brand new Skype account that he's never used before. And he's like, why can't you get hold of me? I'm online. You can't get hold of me.
Only one I've got.
And there's me just flapping like a bird about to hit the roof of my shed. And then I'm quickly trying to be... And you must think, these guys are freaking idiots. How
what a surprise. I caused a technical difficulty. What a shock.
But how was it from the inside?
I'm just amazed you guys managed to say anything. It's so busy.
Yeah.
So much goes on.
I know.
It's just amazing. And you just sort of say moderately intelligent things. It's just, how? How?
I think that's called damning by faint praise, isn't it?
Vaguely, yeah.
But you see how quickly the chat room flies by. When we have a chat room host,
yeah.
I don't look at the chat room because I think, good, there's enough eyes on the chat room. But of recent times, it does... yeah, it does. It's still going, and it flies by, and it's very hard to conduct a show, a live stream. People from the rest of the panel are very good at messaging to say, "Oh, someone's out of shot," or "You've missed this issue." They're concentrating on all these mediums. The soundboard disaster today because the soundboard is on what is now my kid's phone, and I was using like my sketched up version, which had none of the sounds on them. But yeah, it is very busy in here. So. Appreciate it. Alex, go on. You don't have to put your hand up in this bit.
No, my hand's not up. I'm just,
right.
I have an arm on my hospital chair. But to be fair, I have to go because I'm starting a new job tomorrow. I'm being picked up by my said boss tomorrow at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, and then I'm away till Wednesday. So,
actually, I love hanging up on Jeansy. How many times have I kicked him out of various WhatsApp groups? It's quite funny. Like he gets really gobby, and I just go hang up. Anyway, yeah, you say that chat room. It flies by really quick, and. It's like I want to do it more. I want to do it more justice, but it's quite hard to.
You said to me, the chat room. You just keep track of the chat room, do the top 3, and I thought that's going to be all right. And then I just realised it's Baku.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then that race happened. And it was like the more happened in that race than I've ever seen in any race before, except the previous Baku. Yeah, I'm a bit punch drunk after that.
Oh, good. So it's a worthwhile thing doing because I do like inviting, the people who we've gotten to know, especially in the Slack group, the people who've come karting and everything. I think it's a worthwhile thing to do, getting people on. So, yeah. Okay, absolutely. As long as it was fun, that's good. I think you've chickened out of joining me karting tomorrow. You've definitely chickened out.
I would love to come. I would love to come. There'll be a classroom there with 60 students staring at a blank wall without any lecturer there, so I'm going to have to shut up.
I'm not going to blow my own trumpet, but even my boss went, yeah, you've been working hard, just go. All right, Peter, thank you very much for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Bye.
Bye, there we go. So let's put the coffee mugs up there. Let's be on brand. So I'm not going to hang around for long, but I just want to say thank you very much, guys. No, we did it was a normal start, wasn't it? Hang up on Jeansy all the time, kick him out of WhatsApp groups all the time, and it's really fun. Agreed. Maybe make it something you pay to do. Oh, what chatting on here? I didn't understand that whole thing about paying for the chat. I've seen Super Chat, and it says, do you want to enable Super Chat? I think that kind of sucks when, it's not that many people. We had 130 at any one time. And I think we'll have 300 over the course of the live stream. As if we do have people with their eyes on, then it's okay. We can have people monitoring it. The problem is when it's just me on my own and it's really busy, like it is with the special guest interviews sometimes when I'm on my own. It's really distracting because you're having to respond to one person and then go to the chat. But yeah, I love having you guys in there. No, if you want to support us though, just come and join our Patreon community. Come join us in the Slack group. Come and get these waffle casts. They're not really waffle casts, but basically these end bits we chuck out and we put on the end there. I think Super Chat would ruin the chat room as well. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that. Tell you what, if we get like 1,000 people watching our live stream, stranger things have happened. I don't know. Then maybe there's a case for it there, where it's just sort of firing through. But at the moment, it is manageable. It's distracting because your comments are fantastic, but it is manageable. And having a chat room host for the race reviews really helps because the race reviews are technically the hardest ones to show run. So in that respect, definitely race reviews. Do we have Discord? No. No, I'm not worrying. The new shows are the ones that are the best for the chat room. And when I've got Matt and Chris, because I slate Chris a lot, but Chris is very on topic. He knows the topics inside out, even if he's not going to give an opinion. Matt, whenever Matt gets into a point, I can almost stop listening because me and Matt chat so often during the week, I know the point he's going to make. So that is really, really handy. Like, I'm starting to think of Matt as a friend, to be honest. And by the way, I am putting big pressure on Matt to fly over. I'm putting big pressure on Matt to fly over for our karting event, yeah? So I think I've sorted out the track. I'm going to see it tomorrow. I'm not going to say anything until it's sorted, but I think I've sorted out the track. I think I've sorted out the date. I think we're going to do the live recording there at the time. Chris is off the shelf. That's right. Yeah, he is. Boom. So then I said to our karting WhatsApp group, for the people who've been karting with us, we set up a WhatsApp group. I said, next mission is to get Matt Trumpets in. And to my shock, several people, straight away, about 5 people just said, I'll chuck a tenner in, I'll chuck a tenner in, I'll chuck a tenner in. One person who I know has a decent job said, I will contribute, and went and sourced the prices. And then somebody else sent me a private message saying, I will pay £50 to have Matt over. And I was like, no, that's too generous. That's too generous. And he said, no, stop it. He goes, this is a personal friend, by the way. He just said to me, no, it will make the event better. Therefore, it will make it better for me. And I know it will make you happy. I can do this. I just want to do this. And I just want to, my general thing with Missed Apex stuff is if people offer things, you know, I take it because it's for the project as a whole, not for me. Find that very difficult to do. But I was like, whoa, hang on a minute. I'm counting out the change. And it's like, well, actually, now this is very doable. If the project splits it with Matt as well, we could have Matt Trumpets over for a bit of karting and for the actual, how good would the live show be if it was actually, you know, me and Matt sat there as well with Brad, with Jeansy, with, well, I don't know who can make it now. I think Chris Stevens can make it now that we've moved the date. So yeah, really, really good. Get him over and I'll sort something out for him and MK. Oh, wow, that's sweet in the pot. A team employee has just said that. Get him over and I'll sort something out for him in MK. Wow. And yeah, jet lagged. I tell you what, an European there is saying Matt would be jet lagged. That's cruel. Okay, that's not even the start. I'm gonna even that. Don't worry. I said to Matt, you fly over here on Friday. You fly over here on Friday. We'll go stay somewhere. We'll stay in a hotel nearby. We will drink enough whiskey to make karting difficult the next day. So I will basically join him in his jet lagged state. Don't tell the drag. We're going to drink a lot of whiskey, you know? Yeah, it's going to happen. Yeah, me and Matt with the same background. So yeah. So that's, yeah, that's that. That's that. Good. I'm going to go. I'm going to get that edit done. Work tomorrow. Well, half a day. And then I'm off to check out this Grand Prix track. Thank you very, very much for joining me. Buy a mug. Support us on Patreon. Come karting with me. Come see our live show. Goodbye.